We're finally getting back into the book of Mark and our Bible study here. And it's been quite some time. It's just been a busy spring, I guess, and busy with all sorts of things that I haven't gotten back to it. Now, I guess since revival, we were in revival meeting or just right before that, we had Bible study. And so anyway, now, almost a month later, we're finally getting back to it. But we're still in Mark chapter 10, actually. And so if you have your Bibles handy, we had just looked at the rich young ruler and got Jesus dealing with him on his the one key issue that he lacked, verse 21. But then, shortly after that, Jesus began talking to his disciples about how he was going to have to die. He was going to be going in verse 33. It says that they're going to go to Jerusalem. They will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and scourge him, to spit on him, to kill him. And then he does tell him at the end of verse 34, and the third day he shall rise again. So you have all that happening, and Jesus is right here at the very end of his life, basically just telling them, okay, it's almost time. This is what I've come for, and it is going to require me to take the role of a servant, take the role of a sacrifice, and give my life for the world. It's a little hard in a way for us to continue reading then, because verse 35 shows how out of touch even James and John, they would be some of the main disciples. We think of them as the two of the three in the inner circle, along with Peter. And so it's these two, and they come to Jesus and they're saying, now, Master, we did have one favor to ask of you yet. And so Jesus asked them, verse 36, what do you want me to do for you? I'll just read it here as it says. And he said unto them, what would ye that I should do for you? They said unto him, grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. Two problems with that. The first being that they thought still that it's going to be an earthly kingdom. So that's number one. That's one problem. He's just tried to tell them that I'm not here. I know that's maybe a little different wording, but basically it's saying, you thought you're here for an earthly kingdom? That's not what's going to happen. And they still can't get that out of their mind. The other problem is that Jesus is telling them, demonstrating to them really, what it really means to, shall I say, to please God, to be Christ-like. Obviously, he's the one showing them how. He is Christ. And so he's showing them it requires a humbling of ourselves, becoming the servant, becoming the sacrifice, being ready to take whatever injustice comes our way. And right after that, we read, they're saying, we want to be able to sit on the right and left hand. We want to be in the places of honor in your kingdom. And I know it's easy for us to be hard on them from this point of view. However, we need to recognize that speaks to us too. Pretty soon, the other disciples are finding out about it. Of course, Jesus even put them to the test a little bit and said, are you sure you're ready for this? Can you go through the things that I'm going to be going through? And of course, they said, sure, yeah, we can do that. We're able to do that. In verse 39. And then in verse 41, it says that 10 heard about it. And when they heard about it, they were also upset. Now, on one hand, we would say, well, I can't blame them. On the other hand, you can say, well, they're just like the other two. So everybody wants to be first. And that wasn't really the purpose. And Jesus goes a little further and says here, it's not supposed to be that way among my followers. You're all worried about who's going to be first. Who's going to be the place of honor? Who's going to be exalted? What does it matter to you? My kingdom is one of humility. My kingdom is one here of suffering. And ultimately, one day we know it's glory, but here on this earth, his kingdom is all about being the servant. And so in verse 44, he says, and whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be the servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. So today I just want us to recognize ourselves in this story. I guess that's what it comes down to. Because so often, whether it's how big my church is, or how prominent my name is, how much even maybe financial advantage I get, what's the best way for me to get ahead? Even as Christians, sometimes we get caught in that trap. And Jesus is saying it's not about that. His real test of the greatest is who is willing to be the servant of all. Who is willing to be the lowest? Just recently heard, I'm not sure, it may have been at the Interchurch Holiness Convention, maybe it's somewhere else, but I just heard recently someone remind us, and unfortunately I cannot remember the source of it now, but he said he used to think that God had different spiritual advantages and blessings, on shelves, and the further up toward God we get, the more we can access these other blessings that he has on the higher shelves. But then he said he found out that in reality, it's the other way around. And he has the best blessings on the lowest shelves. And you have to get low. You have to get humble to be able to really receive those things or be able to get access to them. And I think that's a good reminder for us, even from this passage here. Sometimes we can almost think that we ought to have all the advantages, all the blessings. We ought to have some real special things because we're his special children. But in reality, he says, would you be my servant? Does it matter to you if you're never really known very much? Does it matter to you if your name is never really broadcast around the world? Does it matter? As long as you're serving me. And so I'd encourage us today and call us, including me, because it's the test for all of us. But I'd encourage all of us to say, Lord, make me a servant. May I be humble. May I be willing to serve in whatever capacity you have for me. It does not have to include any sort of fanfare or even any honor whatsoever, but just that I can be your servant. And really, that's what he demonstrated. And so as we follow after Christ, and we are his disciple, let's be sure that we are willing to be the servant of all. Well, God bless you this week. And hopefully I can get back to it soon. We will be away again in revival meeting for just a little bit, but hopefully we can get back to it pretty soon and follow up. We have the story of Bartimaeus next, and we'll see just what all we get into in the coming weeks. Well, God bless you, and check in again very soon for another Bible study.